Throughout these various exercises in painting and drawing, I've tried to keep to budget materials, but with crayons I've gone the other way. It's no good buying a box of a dozen crayons or 24. If you can work with crayons, you need the subtleties of a large range of colour. Here you have all the different shades making up the complete spectrum, and variations of shades from greens to browns, blues, reds, yellows. It's the only way you can get that range of colours that produces you a really good finish. Now, when you work with crayon, you work very evenly and very light pressure, and you can build up layers with different shades, layers upon layer. Use it very lightly and very consistently so you don't end up with streaky lines. Shading varies. Little circles like this, you want a very, very smooth piece of shading. Otherwise, light lines. Use a scrap of paper once again, hand protector, just to even off the end of your pencil to make sure that when you're colouring you get a nice smooth end. Build up your layers of colour. Colour upon colour. This is flesh. You take a shade of pink, blood orange, a bit of crimson, and you build up the shades of flesh. You can take purple then and run purple on top to bring a purple shadow in. Purple goes on top of green, which brings a shadow in. Even on blue. You see, you build up your layers, almost like you're doing watercolour. Thin layers built up, very effective. Just on the browns alone, look at all these different shades of brown in the box. Reddish brown through to earth brown, dark browns. When I do cartoons, I keep a book of ideas, which is just basically one line to give me the idea of the drawing that'll make up the basis for the cartoon. And of course, punchlines. Right, start off with your pencil, and on your rough pad, the cheap paper pad, work out the basic drawing idea. This is a caravanning cartoon, so I want caravans in there. I probably want a motorhome, and I want a chap sitting having a bath in a pond, which is going to be campsites with full ablution facilities. Build up your sketch on your rough paper so you have the basic mechanics of the drawing worked out, so you can then transpose it onto your good paper. Once you've done that, here we go. This has got to be a nice clean drawing. Start out with a pencil. Keep your other drawing in front of you and work out the drawing. Get it sketched in. Do the whole thing. You can adjust it where you've seen what's wrong on the first one, get it right on the second. There goes your caravan, blocked in shape. Use the pencil to get the drawing really well plotted in, so when you do the pen and ink there's no guesswork involved. You've decided exactly how it's going to work out. So do an accurate, good quality drawing. Caravan. On a drawing like this, you don't have to draw the specific make of caravan, but what you do is you produce a drawing of a caravan that is recognized with a caravan with the main features of it and occasionally some of the exaggerated features. Little motorhome in the background there. Draw it carefully. Take your time over this stage because it sets up the whole picture. You know where you're going, you can rub out your mistakes, you can make sure you've got it exactly as you want it. Then start in the far distance and plot in your views. When I do a cartoon like this, I like to make it a picture that stands on its own, which is quite a humorous drawing on its own without a caption. So the caption adds to it. So people can actually spend time looking at the picture and seeing things in there which gives them pleasure and delight. Here we go, down to the water's edge. Remember what I told you earlier, your lines, mirror image, some water lilies, oval leaves sitting on the surface. Let's put a flower in. Sketch in a flower. Once again, you stylize them. You stylize the objects in there and they can become recognizable. Next we start inking with the black fiber tip pens. And using the 0.25, the fine one, you start right at the back of the picture. Start drawing in your outlines and then filling them in with shading, and increase thickness of line by going back over it to emphasize the lines you want to stand out more than others. And the shading goes in. You'll notice that I'm not using any piece of paper to protect the cartridge paper from my hand, rubbing graphite everywhere. The main reason for that is because I'm working in pen and ink. Once the drawing's finished, we'll take a rubber to it and clean off all the graphite, so you don't really need to worry about putting something between your hand and the paper. Get the little thatch cottage to nestle into the landscape there, the hedge in front, shading, cross-hatching vertical lines, and then bring in angle lines to represent the light going onto it and the shadow. Once again, start on the figure and stick to a fine pen. I tend to work 0.25 and do figures with that, so you get the detail in. You can always go back with the broader pen and increase the thickness of lines where it's necessary. But it's much easier to increase the thickness of a line later than to find you've drawn something with too heavy a line to start with. So keep it subtle, keep it delicate. Here we go. Bubbles, soap bubbles in the water, in the ripples where he's splashing about. Just keep building up the picture. Working on the riverbank now and or the pond shore if it's a pond. And the grass is overhanging the earth bank. We're also going to put colour onto this picture, so there's a degree of temperance when you do the pen and ink because you're going to be using colour on top of it as well. But try and get it as a drawing that would stand alone as a drawing, and then put the colour on. Once again, you do the bulrushes. Remember, the water down below, mirror image. Here we are, do the lily pad and draw the lily pads in, the flower, each of the oval pads, where the stalks go into the centre and then back onto the bank, and the earth bank sloping down towards the water. And build up the grass across to the caravan there. Then take your 0.35 pen and draw in your caravan, motorhome. Just plot it in using the lines you did with pencil. As you see, the picture starts building. You're going to run it off at the edges, run it nicely off into the white paper so it doesn't have a harsh edge. So you get the white surround. So eventually if it's ever framed or if it sits on a card, you've got a nice edge, not a harsh right to the end. You see that? Just blend it and run it out into the edge of the picture. Let's put some, what is called in Swahili, maridadi, a little bit of decoration on the side of the caravan. You've got the curtains in there. We'll come back and shade that in a while. There we go, now the trees. Starting to build up the shading. Starts bringing a three-dimensional quality into the picture. When I'm drawing, I tend to work very much on an erratic system whereby I'll work on one bit and jump somewhere else, and it looks erratic, but in fact what it is, it's trying to balance the whole picture as you build it. So if you work on one bit and get it too intense too soon, then you get to the front and you find that you've gone too dark or too intense or too detailed in the background, and you can't get the front to marry to it. You want to produce a harmony in your picture. the shading, everything harmonises, which is pleasing to the eye. Art's for pleasure, you're doing it for pleasure. And people looking at it, you want them to have a sense of pleasure from it. Right or wrong, that's what I believe with my art. I really don't want to be depressed by it. There's enough grey skies and concrete and misery in the world. This is sheer, unadulterated pleasure. And cartoons, of course, even better because it gives people something to laugh at. As they say, laughter's the best medicine. I love doing these. Wonderful pastime. They're very popular as well. People like them. Carry on with your shading. You see I'm building it up all over the picture. A bit here, a bit there. So that no part dominates the other. Get the detail in. Where you've got black like that, the wheels. Black them in. And then the shadow underneath the caravan, start building that up. Once again, you see it sits in the air until you put the shadow in, and the shadow locks it into the ground. Can you see that? That caravan now sits there, same as the riverbank here. Thickening the line along his back, that needs a bit of enhancing. And the brush, bring it out a bit. And then the shading on the riverbank, which brings the riverbank to the water's edge. There you go, underneath that overhanging bank. Nice bit of shading down there. Cross-hatching. Vertical lines. Go three ways basically. Vertical and then diagonal. Left and right diagonal. Fill in your grass. You see the way you finish it round towards the edge of the picture. Move your picture around when you're drawing. I'm signing it now because it's getting towards the end of the pen and ink. Ready to start with the colour. There it is. Nice standalone drawing which you're now going to colour. Check it. Add a bit here and there if you need to. Stand back and look at it. Great trick. Stand it up and look at it through a mirror. You see it like a third person sees it. Sort of look over your shoulder at it through a mirror. Amazing, you'll notice things through that you don't notice when you look straight at the picture. And there it is. Next is to clean your picture, to rub off all the graphite of the original pencil drawing. Once again, even pressure, don't overdo it, and don't sweep off the rubbings out with the side of your hand and put more graphite on. Use a brush. I keep a special old clothes brush which I use for brushing off the rubbings. There we go, because they have a lot of graphite on them, so if you use your hand you'll just smear that back onto the paper. Keep on doing it until it's absolutely clean. It is just a pen and ink drawing. Carefully work over and then brush and then inspect it closely. Make sure you've got all the graphite off and so you've got a nice clean picture. Colouring. Now I tend to work to a system with colour and I always start with the sky. And this one is just a straightforward plain blue sky. Carefully shaded in. I'm shading in one direction, angling my brush lines so that you have a slightly linear effect of the sky going from left to right. When you're doing the sky, come down to the front and work some of that blue into the pond or the river, which is reflected from the sky. Then you take a light green and you carefully shade in all the hedges. Once again, depending on the box of crayons you get, you choose your greens accordingly. Come down the front here. So you block in areas of colour. So there's your greens all blocked in, hedges and trees. Next with the yellow you work in the thatch of the cottage. All base colours, you're going to work colour over this. Very light, very evenly shaded on. And do your fields. It's late summer. The crops are golden, they've been cut, so you've got the yellow fields and the green trees. The yellow brings a lot of warmth into your picture. You see how the colour runs into the white around the top, nicely finished off onto the white paper. Now I'll start with a very pale green. So some of the fields are going to be yellows and others pale grassy green. You're basically blocking in. Here I am with a light peach, giving the caravan, although they're white, they've actually started to get more colours in the caravans, but use a off-white just to get the caravan to harmonise into your picture. Then you start going with a second layer. I'm going to touch a brown into the picture. Look for the areas with brown and go around and shade those in as you work. Your light browns and very evenly shade. The idea is to colour in the whole picture and then just build up your layers of colour. Here we go, a bit of reflection down below the bank into the water with brown. Remember what I was saying about mirror images? Same applies with colour. If you look at water, you have the blue of the sky and then all the greens of the reflected vegetation around the water. Next we're going to do the flesh tones of the chap in the water having his bath, using a pink, a blood orange and a red. The idea is to build up the flesh colour using layers of crayon. So a very thin, evenly applied layer of pink, and then the blush orange, the blood orange, even colour all over. And then you're going to take the red and start doing the red bits, like his cheeks, his bald head catching the sun, the end of his nose, along his arm. Just build up subtle layers of colour. Go back and bring a bit of peach into it. I'm using black now, which was the black hairs of the brush and the wheels of the vehicles. And colour his hair in. Choose whatever colour you like. You don't have to follow me. This is how I do it. You don't want to be a clone. Do your own thing. Just use this as a guide to show you what you can do. Here we go. A bit of reflection in the water there. You build up. As long as you use subtle layers, you can increase by putting another layer onto it. If you go too harsh too early, you won't be able to do that. So, like you'll see in watercolour, you build up thin layers. You don't overdo it. When you're working on a drawing, move the paper around to a comfortable position so it adjusts to your hand. There he is. Whilst you've got the pinks and the reds, do the water lily flower. Check over the picture for anything else that might be red. Oh, look at that. A bit of blue-green for the glass in the windows. In fact, I think the colour on this one's called sea green. And a bit of red then on the curtains. If you get a piece of glass and look at the end on, it'll be green. And if you match that green and put that into your pictures on your windows, it's a very, very good colour to use as a base colour when you're doing windows on buildings, anything with glass in. There you are. As I said, turn the picture around accordingly and start with your second layer of greens on the trees. Build it up so that you get the three-dimensional quality of the tree. So you've got the light green moving to a more robust, darker green. All along the hedges the same. But choose your colours carefully. You've got a whole range in the box. Use them. Go to the distant ones and go to a bluey green. So you graduate your picture by using the colour to a blue-green distant trees to fresher greens and darker and more intense as you get to the front of the picture. Can you see how that's building up with the depth? There you go, working more colour into the distant hills, darker bluey green. Then you start with the grass. It's a riot of different shades of green grass if you actually look at it. So that's what you want to do, is bring subtle changes into the colours on the meadows, on the thatched roof. Build up your layers. Can you see how that's taking shape now? You can see, move the picture around to where you're comfortable to colouring it. Now what you want to do is start bringing more shadow into it. So you take a purple. This is a royal purple I'm using, which once again you'll find the colours tend to vary with different crayon manufacturers. And start working that into the shadows to give it a warmth on a sunny day. You've got the deep purple shadows. You'll see I use it with watercolour, I use it with everything. I love my purple. It's a magic trick on pictures, and it makes the picture leap out the paper at you. All the shadow branches at the back there. If you look through a tree, the trees in front will be silhouetted and dark, and you'll see the background like leaves in the background. They're actually purple. Work purple into your windows, a shade inside the caravan, underneath the caravan, back into the bank. Over other colours you'll find it changes the colour completely. Look at that, through the bulrushes there, behind them, into the water. Nice contrast between water and bank, little man in pink. And you're going to have a bash with him in a minute. There's some reflection under his armpit, along the bottom of his arm there, side of his leg, away from the light. You see, builds it up. The far side of the reeds on the other side of the water there. Just keep on, look back, stop. Where do you need some more? And apply it. Gentle layers. Just keep on building. There we go. Nice collection of shadows in there. So there's your picture coloured. Now what I like to do, just to bring some more sparkle into it, is to, using a dip pen and white acrylic ink, just work in some fine extra white lines on his shoulder there, sparkle in his eye, on his nose, just white lines here and there, but really makes the picture jump. I do the same with gouache on watercolours, etc., but this is just using a dip pen and white acrylic ink. Work over the whole picture. Little subtle lines here and there. Once it's done, they don't notice, but they give the picture a terrific sparkle. See that over that bit there, a couple of extra leaves. Little white streaks here and there into the reflection. And then on the surface of the water, make sure when you do lines on your water, they are level. Any lines on water are cockeyed, makes it look like the water's running off the corner of the picture. So many pictures you see spoilt because they haven't been very careful how they put anything linear into their water. It must be horizontal. Slightly inaccurate spoils the picture. Can you see that? Little flashes of white on the water as the water ripples in the sunlight. Down the end there on that dark green. A few of his bubbles, give them a bit of extra white. Lift them. Some droplets of water coming off his brush, off his elbow. A bit of white on the far hedges, just along the top where the light catches them. In the trees as well, on branches. Carefully work over the entire picture. Don't overdo it, just here and there. Little fine line work. Right in front there on the water lily. And over that overhang. There we go. Just to bring that extra sense of sparkle to the picture. And there you are. Now what I've done is I've gone back again and got some extra yellow because I want to warm up that grass in front. So just run some extra yellow on there and some on him, give him a bit more warmth to his body. He's looking a bit too insipid, a bit like an uncooked chip. A bit of yellow on him warms him up a bit. All over, a bit of yellow, bit of heat into the picture. There you go. So there you have the campsite with all modern facilities, even somewhere to have a bath. I'm pleased with that. Nice little picture.